Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this video for the Dancing Butterfly Quilt. Today we're going to learn feathers, beautiful free motion feather designs. I can't wait to show you exactly how to quilt these in free motion and how to troubleshoot some of the major issues that happen along the way. So let's get started. So here's our free motion quilting design. This is a kind of a template and guide for you to practice with. If you're looking for this, you can click right here and find it in the Dancing Butterfly Quilt pattern. This link will take you to leahday.com where you can pick up the pattern, download and print out all of these beautiful templates for you to practice and play with. Okay, so here's our feather design, and really this is going to be something that you really want to mark on fabric and practice quilting on the marked lines. It's really important to practice marked feathers. That's how I learned this. It took many different times just marking it on fabric, stitching it on the lines before I got the hang of the shape. Also spend some time tracing this design. See what feels most comfortable for you, whether it's stitching from the bottom of the feather like this, or it's stitching from the top of the feather and swinging out and down like this. Everyone stitches feathers differently. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but you have to take the time to practice and play with it before you're going to get the hang of it. So now let's get on the machine and I'll show you how to stitch them in free motion. Okay, so I'm in my square and ready to get started. I'm going to start with just a long wiggly line. I'm working from one edge of my quilting space to the other, and I'm going to fit 3 feathers into this 8-inch square. And I kind of space them out evenly so they're all going to be about the same size. Okay, so I got down to the bottom, and how I like to form my feathers is to form them from the bottom working up. So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to travel stitch over just a bit, and your bottom feather is really the most important. You want to make sure it's nice and plump, but the most important part is the angle that it hits the stem, that first line that you stitched. The angle that it hits the stem is super important because that angle kind of determines the next feather shape. And if you end up coming in, let's say your line wasn't that nice beautiful angle, instead it was more perpendicular to the vine line like this, it would end up looking more like a kind of a leaf shape and not really that nice kind of fluid curved feather shape. So I'm going to keep that in mind. That angle is really key. Okay, I'm going to come in with another feather. And how I quilt my feathers is I always travel back along the top edge of the feather, reach about this point, and then I swing out and around with the next feather. So it's a good bit of travel stitching, and the travel stitching is always in the same place. It's always along the top side, kind of the space between the feathers. Coming out and around. Of course, this is not the only way that you can quilt a feather. Here's another way to quilt a feather. In this case, you would travel stitch up the stem, come out, swing around, and connect with the feather before. So that's one bounce. Now we're going to bounce back to about right there and bounce out. I call this a bounce feather, or a bump feather, because you're kind of bumping against the other feathers around it. The one thing I don't like about this is that the travel stitching ends up being fairly inconsistent, because you're kind of travel stitching along the stem, then travel stitching along the end of the feather, and it happens kind of spotty. The other type of feather, the travel back feather, I really like that because the travel stitching is always in the same space. So that's why I prefer it. I just think it looks prettier. But those are just 2 ideas for 2 different ways to form this shape. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I encourage you to play with as many different ideas as you can come up with, because like I said, everyone stitches feathers differently and there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's a fun shape to learn, but it can feel challenging at the beginning when you're first getting started, because you might have heard someone say, oh, here's the only way to do feathers. Well, the fact is there's no single way to do this. There's hundreds of ways to do it. So just have fun and experiment and play. So that's it for learning feathers. I really hope that you enjoyed learning how to quilt this into a block and got some, a little bit more understanding about how many different ways there are to quilt it. I only showed 2 ways to stitch this design, but there are probably hundreds of ways that you can master this design. So play with it, practice, and have loads of fun stitching this design in free motion. If you're wanting to learn more about feathers and of course how to combine this with other designs and stitch a beautiful butterfly quilt, definitely click right here to find the Dancing Butterfly Quilt pattern at leahday.com. We're quilting all of these blocks together, learning how to applique and how to free motion quilt on our home sewing machine, and I really want you to join us for this wonderful quilt along. So definitely click here, check out the pattern, and pick it up today. Until next time, let's go quilt.